Welcome back, students. So, in this session we are going to discuss about sign test for dependent sample. In previous video we have discussed about Wilcoxon sign rank test. Both tests will be used for dependent sample. In this session we are going to discuss about the definition of sign test and we will be describing the different steps involved in solving the sign test, and at last we will be telling like how to conclude based upon the critical value and the calculated value. So, first thing we are going to discuss about the sign test for the dependent sample, the definition. So, sign test is a non-parametric statistical test used to determine whether there is a significant difference between the two dependent group, the same way what we did in Wilcoxon sign rank test. It is used when the data is ordinal or when the assumption of the t test for dependent sample is violated, that is we are not unable to solve or we are unable to solve the assumption of the pair t test. So, the different case scenario when we come across what kind of test should be applied. Suppose we will be having a scenario like a neutralist wish to compare the hemoglobin level between before and after the iron and folic supplement to establish the effectiveness of the iron and folic supplement. So, after giving the supplement whether they have the effect or not, that is before and after. A psychologist wish to compare the hours of a sleep as an effect of a drug and placebo in a crossover trial. So, they want to check it like by giving a drug how much hours they sleep and by giving a placebo how much hours they sleep for a same person. And a dental researcher wish to know if a teaching people how to brush their teeth could be beneficial or not for their oral health, like it is something like teaching effectiveness, whether after teaching how much they have been benefited or not. So, it is like before and after. So, now we can discuss about the different steps involved in solving the sign test. So, step 1, first thing we have to define the null and alternative hypothesis. So, there is no difference between the oral health index before and after the teaching how to brush. So, from the previous case scenario we are framing this null hypothesis. So, alternative hypothesis will be there is a difference between the oral health index before and after teaching how to brush. So, by giving this teaching whether their effectiveness, that is health index, has been improved or not. So, what are the different steps? The same steps like collect the data. So, how to collect the data? Each pair of the observation should represent before and after or pre and post. Measurement should be like from the same subject or the matched pairs. Then we have to calculate the difference. So, calculate the difference between the paired observation. So, for each pair subtract the measurement in the first group from the measurement in the second group. So, we have two groups like before and after, and we are going to calculate the difference. What will be the step 4? So, step 4 we are going to assign the signs. So, after assigning a positive sign to the difference that are greater than 0, that is second measurement will be larger, and negative sign that vice versa to the difference that are less than 0. So, if it is greater than 0 we are going to give it as positive sign, and if it is less than 0 we are going to give it as a negative sign, and everything is based upon like we are going to assume like second measurement is larger, or we have to take it in the vice versa first measurement is larger. Ignore the pairs with the difference of 0. If suppose you come across two observation, same observation and difference as 0, please ignore it. And step 5 will be we have to count the sign. So, counting like count the number of positive and negative signs, let denote the smaller count, like we have to check it like positive sign and negative sign, and we have to take the minimum, the smaller value, where s plus is the positive sign and where s minus is nothing but the number of negative signs. So, what is step 6? So, determine the critical value. So, same way we have to follow the table value and we have to check at the different levels of alpha. So, determine the critical value for the sign test based on your desired level of significance alpha, and the sample size will be like n. So, you can use the statistical table or the any kind of software to find that critical value. So, step 7 it is like compare the observed test statistic to the critical value, whether it is greater or whether it is lesser. So, if n is less than the critical value, that is s critical value, then do not reject h naught, do not try to reject the null hypothesis, and conclude that there is no difference in the oral health index between before and after giving that teaching effect. If suppose n is greater than critical value, that is the other direction, then reject h naught and conclude that there is a difference between oral health index before and after before giving that teaching procedure. Then step 8, report the result. So, how to we are going to conclude the result? Report the result of your analysis including the observed test statistics, that is critical value n, and decision regarding the null hypothesis. In this session, so far we have discussed about sign test for dependent sample. In that we have described about the steps involved, how to solve the sign test for dependent sample. Totally 8 steps has been discussed, and at last we have given the conclusion how to reject or accept the null hypothesis. In the next session, we will be discussing about how to solve the problem using Wilcoxon sign rank test and sign test. Thank you.